Okay, for this week's package, we're down in Bedfordshire at Childerless Sporting HQ. I love coming down here, but this year we're doing something a little bit different. I mean, normally we come down, or we will be coming down in February to do some culling with some guys towards the end of whole season. But a few sort of folk down here who wanted to try and get through the DSC Level 2, so we come down with the guys, Graham and Steve, and I'm doing some training. Steve and Graham are doing some witnessing for Level 2, and it's an ideal opportunity to actually get a Level 2 done, because you know you can see deer out in the field, so you can demonstrate all the particular requirements of the Level 2 assessment. So we're down here for about a week, and you know, we'll get guys out over 2 days and either train or assess as need be, so it gets them well down the road to hopefully achieving going towards their DSC Level 2. So it's quite a nice week. Weather-wise, it's been quite good for us. But this afternoon we were kind of in between stalks, if you like. We tend to do an AM early and a PM outing, so we came out and took the opportunity of trying shoot a cull Chinese water deer. Driving in, we could see quite a large group of deer in fact actually in the fields at the back of me, just over the edge. There were quite a large group of deer, obviously settled for the day. So what we did was work a reasonably big sort of pincer movement to try and get round into them and downwind. Fairly early in the Chinese water deer season. They're just coming to the rut. We've seen a little bit of activity, but they're not obviously hard at it yet. We're just kind of starting, and we're hoping to try and film a little bit of that activity if we can. We've got a bit of a gap in between taking people out, so we've just come out to try and do a little bit of filming. We've got a group of Chinese water deer laid up in front of us. They're pretty settled, sort of during the middle of the day now. One or two walkers about on the periphery, and they seem to lie up into these little sort of largish fields where they're not disturbed much. So we're gonna kind of walk forward and see what we've got in here. We're only really wanting cull deer, so basically, and no mature does. So we're wanting sort of young does or young bucks really, just to start off on the cull. Paul tells me it's been a really good year for them, good breeding year. I mean, some of that possibly is to do with a lack of disturbance and people walking and dogs, etc. So they've been totally settled. But for whatever reason, they've had a really good year. So retention rates have been very good. So he's got a lot of deer on the ground. So he'll obviously need to just reduce those numbers, so we're not getting too much damage to the crop. So we are hopefully going to try and assist him with that this afternoon. We shall see how we do. Started to run because there's some bucks. A couple of big bucks have just chased in. There's quite a big group laid down and they just charged in and lifted them all, so they're running about. So definitely starting to get a bit risky. Initially, the deer we got into were within range, but we just couldn't engineer a backstop. so try to move around a little bit to create that, but we were kind of struggling, so we just really sat and waited and watched. In actual fact, we were assisted slightly by a couple of walkers who walked along the edge of the field below us and then came across the hedge line. And because they were skylined about 2 fields away, it actually pushed a couple of Chinese water deer across, which spooked our deer and started to move 1 or 2 of them down. So you'll see that the young Chinese water deer kind of worked down and just nicely came down below the skyline and then worked across to our left. Nice backstop, so it was, from that point it was relatively easy. Okay, so young Chinese water deer male, ideal cull animal. There's quite a few young males with that group actually, not that many females, and there was a bit of interaction between the larger bucks kept chasing across. One large buck with the group, a doe, and then this young Chinese, so broadside shot, took him quite nicely. Obviously you see he dropped on the spot, so we can do a suspended gralloch on the tree. So we'll do a little cursory examination of him in a minute when I've got the gloves on. Thus far we've not found any ticks on these deer at all, so who knows, there'll probably be 1 or 2 somewhere which we can find. Okay, so relatively easy to bring the deer back in, and while we're coming back in through the hedge, it's amazing how many sloe berries there are here. It's at the hedgerows, the blackthorn are absolutely covered in sloe this year, so it must have been a good year for sloe gins.